May 24th, 1941, 5:45 a.m. The Denmark Strait, North Atlantic. The air is cold enough to cut steel. High on the armoured command tower of HMS Hood, Gunnery Officer George Brooks squints through the driving sleet. The wind shrieks through the rigging. Below him, the 47,000-ton battlecruiser, the pride of the Royal Navy, the largest warship in the world, is crashing through the frigid North Atlantic swells. They have found it. 17 miles distant, a shadow, almost invisible in the pre-dawn gloom, just flashed. 1, 2, 3, 4. Orange-yellow pinpricks of fire. "She's firing!" someone screams. It is the Bismarck. "Action! All main armament! Target the lead ship!" The voice of Vice Admiral Lancelot Holland crackles down the voice pipe. With a sky-tearing roar, Hood's 8 15-inch guns reply. An earth-shattering concussion, a recoil that shakes the entire vessel, blasting ice from the railings. They are in a duel. The pride of Britain against Hitler's newest menace. With Hood is the battleship, HMS Prince of Wales, a ship so new that civilian dockyard workers are still on board, desperately trying to fix its gun turrets as it sails into battle. They are confident. Hood is a legend, but Bismarck is a killer. Launched just 2 years prior, she is the most advanced, most heavily armoured, and most feared warship on the planet. 50,000 tons of Krupp steel, high-velocity German 15-inch guns, and a near-perfect Zeiss optical fire control system. It is not just a ship, it is a floating fortress designed for one purpose: destruction. And she is on her maiden mission, Operation Rheinübung, to break out into the Atlantic and slaughter the convoys that are Britain's lifeline. 6 a.m. Bismarck and her consort, the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen, have concentrated their fire on Hood. "Fifth salvo incoming," the lookout shouts. George Brooks sees them, tiny black dots, growing at a terrifying speed, a deafening, rising shriek. One 1,800-pound, 15-inch shell, travelling at twice the speed of sound, has made a 1-in-a-million shot. It plunged in a high arc, pierced Hood's thin deck armour, her one fatal weakness, and drove deep into the ship's innards, right next to the mainmast. It detonated in the 4-inch magazine. A chain reaction. Hundreds of tons of cordite igniting at the same instant. For the men on Prince of Wales half a mile away, the world vanishes. HMS Hood does not just explode, it vaporizes. A blinding, yellow-white column of fire erupts, 1,000 feet into the air. The massive hull is snapped in two like a twig. The bow and stern are flung upward, before sliding back into the boiling, churning sea. In 90 seconds, HMS Hood and 1,415 of her crew are gone. There are only 3 survivors. The news flashes across the radio to London like an electric shock. In the Admiralty War Room, officers stare at each other, their faces white. Winston Churchill, given the news, issues a cold, brief, and absolute order. Sink the Bismarck. It is no longer a tactical operation. It is now a personal vendetta. The greatest naval hunt in history has begun. Every available ship in the Royal Navy is diverted. From the east, Admiral John Tovey on his flagship King George V. From the south, the powerful Force H, steaming up from Gibraltar, led by Admiral Somerville. And with them, 2 aircraft carriers, HMS Victorious and the veteran HMS Ark Royal. Their primary strike weapon? A joke, a thing scoffed at by German naval officers. It is called the fairy Swordfish. Picture an aircraft. It is not made of gleaming aluminum. Its fuselage is a skeleton of steel tubes, wrapped in linen fabric and painted. It is a biplane, held together by a tangled web of bracing wires, so many that its pilots call it the Stringbag. Its cockpit is completely open, exposing the 3-man crew pilot, observer, and telegraphist air gunner to the full gale force fury of the Atlantic. Its top speed? 143 miles per hour, in a dive, with a tailwind. Its cruising speed, carrying a 1,600-pound Mark 12 torpedo, is just 100 miles per hour, It is slower than a sports car. It flies so slowly it seems to hang in the air. In 1941, the age of the Messerschmitt Bf 109 and the Spitfire, the Stringbag, is a farce, a living relic from the First World War. And this is the weapon the Royal Navy hopes to use to cripple a high-technology Nazi steel fortress. Night of May 24th. Bismarck is racing south. Aboard Victorious, 825 Squadron, led by Lieutenant Commander Eugene Esmond, gets the order. Find and attack Bismarck. Slow her down. 9 Stringbags lift off from the heaving deck in a snowstorm. They navigate through sleet and darkness, flying purely on instruments. They find her. Instantly, Bismarck becomes a volcano. Over 100 anti-aircraft guns from 10.5 centimeters cannons to 20 millimeters flak open up. A solid wall of fire is thrown into the sky. The German gunners, seeing the slow, plodding biplanes, are literally laughing. They call them antiques. Admiral Gunther Lutyens, on Bismarck's bridge, even orders the 15-inch main guns to fire into the sea in front of the planes, creating massive, 100-foot-high waterspouts, trying to swat the flimsy Stringbags from the sky. The British pilots bravely fly straight into it. They fly so low their wheels are almost brushing the wave tops. They drop their torpedoes. One hit. It strikes Bismarck's 13-inch main armor belt. A harmless clang. The torpedo explodes, but the thick Krupp steel shrugs it off. It barely even scratches the paint, though one sailor is killed by the concussion. The Stringbags return, their fabric bodies torn to ribbons by shrapnel. They have failed. They have thrown pebbles at a giant. And then, disaster. 3 a.m., May 25th. Bismarck is leaking oil from an earlier hit by Prince of Wales. Admiral Lutyens decides to abort the mission and heads for the port of Street, Nazaire, France, for repairs. He orders a brilliant, evasive turn, first south, then east. The 2 British cruisers, Suffolk and Norfolk, are tracking Bismarck by radar. Suddenly, at 3:06 a.m., the blip on Suffolk's screen vanishes. The operator frantically tries to regain contact. Nothing, just static. They have lost her. For more than 30 agonizing hours, silence descends on the North Atlantic. Bismarck has vanished. Admiral Tovey is desperate. His fleet is running critically low on fuel. His heavy battleships will have to turn back. The monster has escaped. She is racing for the safety of Luftwaffe air cover off the French coast. If she makes it, she will be repaired, rearmed, and will sail again. Britain has failed. May 26th, 1941, 10:10 a.m., 700 miles west of Street Nazaire, France. The cockpit of the PBY Catalina flying boat is a vibrating, rattling box of cold metal. The co-pilot, Flying Officer Dennis Briggs, of RAF Coastal Command, rubs his stinging eyes. For hours, they have seen nothing but an endless, churning expanse of grey-green water. The monotony is agonizing. Beside him, the American pilot, Ensign Leonard Tuck Smith, an advisor from the still neutral U.S. Navy, fights the controls as the aircraft is battered by rising winds. They are flying Catalina Z 209 on a desperate grid search patrol from their base in Northern Ireland. They are hunting for a ghost. Back in London, the Admiralty's operations room is a place of profound gloom. The pins on the map show Admiral Tovey's home fleet, including King George V and Rodney, critically low on fuel. They have been forced to slow down, their pursuit all but over. The Bismarck is now closer to the protection of German U-boats and Luftwaffe bombers than to the British battleships. Hope is gone. Anything? Briggs asks his navigator, his voice tinny over the intercom. Nothing but static and sea. Smith nudges him, pointing through the perspex. Break in the clouds ahead. Briggs nods, his eyes scanning. The Catalina sinks through a gap in the low, grey overcast. And there it is. At first, it doesn't register. A black shape, cutting white V wakes through the hostile sea. A warship. Good God, Briggs whispers. Tuck, look at the size of it. It's her, Bismarck. She is alone, magnificent, and ploughing eastward at 20 knots. They have found the needle in the haystack. Before Smith can even react, the German ship sees them. The sky erupts. Bismarck's entire anti-aircraft battery opens up. Puffs of black smoke from the heavy 10.5 centimeters guns, joined by the bright, terrifying streams of 20 millimeters and 37 millimeters tracers. "Get us out of here!" Briggs yells. Smith banks the cumbersome Catalina violently. Shells explode all around them, riddling the hull. Shrapnel tears through the thin aluminum skin. The radio operator, bleeding from a wound, frantically taps out the Morse code. 1. Battleship, bearing 112, course 090. 700 miles west of Street Nazaire. They dive back into the cloud, their engines screaming, leaking fuel, but alive. The signal, faint and corrupted by static, is picked up. At the Admiralty, the mood changes from despair to manic energy. Most importantly, the signal is received by Admiral Somerville's Force H, and by one ship in particular, HMS Ark Royal. 14:30 p.m. Flight deck, HMS Ark Royal. The Ark is fighting for her life. The sea, whipped up by a Force 8 gale, is monstrous. The flight deck, 60 feet above the water, is pitching and rolling violently at times. The front of the deck is plunging 50 feet as the bow drops into a trough. Green water, solid waves, are crashing over the deck, sweeping maintenance crews off their feet. It is, by any sane measure, impossible to launch aircraft. But they have no choice. The Bismarck is only 100 miles away. In less than 24 hours, she will be under the protection of the Luftwaffe. This is the last chance. In the briefing room, the pilots of 810, 818, and 820 squadrons are grim-faced. They are told the Bismarck is ahead, but they are also told that one of their own cruisers, HMS Sheffield, has been detached to make visual contact. "Do not," the intelligence officer stresses, "attack Sheffield." They are armed with Mark XII torpedoes, but these are fitted with new, untested magnetic detonators, designed to explode under the ship's keel. 15:00 p.m. The first Stringbag opens its throttle. The biplane, facing a 50-knot headwind, seems to be blasted backward by the gale. The pilot fights the controls as the deck drops away beneath him. He is airborne, barely. One by one, 15 Swordfish claw their way into the hurricane-force winds. They find a ship. Their primitive radar picks up a large contact, right where they expect Bismarck to be. "Tally-ho," calls the strike leader. The biplanes, bucking in the storm, peel off and dive. On the bridge of HMS Sheffield, lookouts stare in horror. "Aircraft! Aircraft diving! They're swordfish! There are swordfish!" The captain shouts, "Make the recognition signal, hard to starboard." The Stringbags attack. They drop their torpedoes. 1, 2, 3 explode prematurely as they hit the water, the faulty magnetic pistols. Another torpedo, its pistol working, streaks toward Sheffield. The cruiser dodges frantically. The torpedo misses. Another detonates in its wake. It is a complete and utter fiasco. The pilots, realizing their catastrophic mistake, break off, horrified. They circle, flash the correct recognition codes, and limp back to the Ark Royal in shame. They land in a driving rainstorm, their tails' hooks barely catching the wires on the pitching deck. They have failed. They have attacked one of their own, and they have warned Bismarck that a carrier is near. 19:00 p.m. Hangar deck, HMS Ark Royal. The mood is beyond grim. It is desperate. It is now or never. The sun is setting. The storm is worse. The armourers work frantically. They pull the faulty magnetic pistols from the remaining torpedoes. They replace them with the old, reliable Mark XI contact detonators, the kind that must physically hit the side of the ship to explode. 15 crews are rebriefed. "This is it," their commander tells them. "No mistakes. Find her, hit her, or she gets away. Go." 20:47 p.m. The flight deck is a scene from hell. It is nearly dark. The wind is howling at over 60 knots. The sea is so violent that the deck is pitching through an arc of 56 feet. The men climb into their open cockpits. They are already soaked to the bone, freezing, blasted by spray. Stringbag after stringbag is revved up. The deck officer times the swell. Waiting. Launch! The pilot releases his brakes. The aircraft lurches forward, drops as the bow drops, and is catapulted into the black, raging sky. 15. WWII Kut Kan. This is not a mission. It is a suicide note thrown into a storm. They are flying into the twilight, into a hurricane, armed with 1,914-era biplanes, to find and kill the most powerful warship on Earth. 2050. May 26th, 1941, 690 miles west of Brest, France. You are in the open cockpit of a fairy Swordfish. The word cockpit is generous. You are on a metal seat, being lashed by hail and sea spray. The wind is a solid, 60-knot force, trying to rip you from the aircraft. The single roar of your Pegasus engine in front of you is almost drowned out by the shriek of the gale. The temperature is just above freezing. You cannot feel your fingers. Every movement of the control column is a fight. This is Lieutenant John Jock Moffat. His observer, sitting directly behind him, is Sub-Lieutenant John Dusty Miller. They cannot see each other. They communicate only by a crackling intercom and thumps on the shoulder. They are flying inside the cloud, completely blind. They are, by their instruments, 50 feet above a sea they cannot even see. They are trusting in a compass, a stopwatch, and Miller's frantic calculations. The 15 stringbags were scattered by the storm almost immediately after takeoff. They are not a squadron. They are 15 individual, desperate attempts. Suddenly, Moffat's aircraft bursts out of a cloud bank. "Warship!" Miller screams. Moffat flinches, his hand going to the torpedo release. But it is HMS Sheffield. This time, they were warned. The British cruiser flashes its signal lamp frantically. "You are on course!" Then another signal. "Enemy 12 miles ahead." They plunge back into the cloud, flying on the given bearing. 12 miles. At 90 knots, that is 8 minutes. The longest 8 minutes of their lives. "Stand by," Miller says, his voice eerily calm. "We should be on top of her." They break through the final cloud, and the world ends. Bismarck is right there, a colossal black mass of heaving steel, rising and plunging in the monstrous waves, and it has seen them. You cannot comprehend the wall of fire that ship puts up. It is not like anti-aircraft fire, it is as if the ship itself has exploded. Over 100 guns, 10.5 centimeters, 37 millimeters, 20 millimeters, all opening up at once. The sky is not black, it is a solid mass of red, green, and orange tracers. Black puffs of flak from the timer-fused shells fill the air. The roar is terrifying. The 15-inch main turrets, the guns that killed Hood, are depressing their barrels and firing into the sea, creating waterspouts hundreds of feet high, trying to swamp the flimsy planes. But here, the stringbag's obsolescence becomes its genius. The German Zeiss fire control systems are technological marvels. They are calibrated to shoot down modern, fast-moving, metal-skinned bombers. They calculate speed, altitude, and bearing, and then lead the target firing at where the plane will be. But the stringbag is too slow. The fabric biplanes are plodding in at 90 knots. The German computers cannot cope. They are leading the targets too far. The streams of 37mm shells are exploding harmlessly in front of the aircraft. The British pilots realize it instantly. They are flying under the fire. "Going in!" shouts the strike leader, Lieutenant Commander Coode. "Attack!" The 15 Swordfish break, diving for the wave tops. It is a chaotic, every man for himself melee. Jock Moffat shoves his stick forward. His stringbag dives. They are at 30 feet. The salt spray is a solid sheet of water in his face. "Left, left," screams Miller. Moffat can see it. A vibrating, skyscraper-sized wall of black steel, ablaze with muzzle flashes. "Steady," Steady! He is flying straight at the broadside. The 20mm gunners are trying to depress their guns low enough to hit him. He can see the tracers ripping the water apart next to his wing. Now! Miller slams his fist on Moffat's shoulder. Moffat hits the release button. There is a violent jolt as the 1,600-pound Mark 12 torpedo drops away. The aircraft, suddenly light, lurches. Moffat banks hard right, a wing-tearing turn that almost scrapes the sea. He skips away over the waves, escaping the inferno. Others are dropping. One torpedo, launched by Lieutenant Commander Coode, hits amidships. A massive column of water, it tears a hole in the belt, causing minor flooding. Another hits the starboard side, but the ship plows on. Bismarck is absorbing the punishment. But Moffat's torpedo, or one from his immediate group, is running true. The time is 21:05. On the bridge of the Bismarck, Admiral Lutyens and Captain Lindemann are watching the attack. Torpedo track approaching. Port quarter. Hard to starboard. Lindemann roars. The great ship begins to turn, trying to comb the track of the torpedo. It is the very act that dooms it. As the ship turns, it exposes its stern. The torpedo, set to run deep, slams into the port side of the stern, right next to the rudder assembly. The explosion doesn't just puncture the hull, it wrecks everything. A colossal jolt, a violent shudder, throws men off their feet on the bridge. The ship rings like a struck bell. The helmsman screams, "Sir, the helm is not responding. He is spinning the wheel uselessly." The indicators show both rudders, jammed hard, 15 degrees to port. Below, damage control parties wade through pitch black, chest-deep water in the steering compartment. They report back. Both rudders are stuck. The steering room is flooded. The propeller shafts are bent. It is impossible to repair. Bismarck, the invincible steel fortress, is now unsteerable. It is locked into a slow, unstoppable turn. It is turning back into the storm. It is turning away from France. It is turning toward Admiral Tovey's home fleet. In the dark, the Stringbag pilots are reforming. They do not know the details. They only know they got hits. They fly back to the Ark Royal. The landings are more terrifying than the launch. Several crash on the pitching deck, but the crews are pulled from the wreckage. A signal is flashed to Admiral Tovey on King George V. Hits obtained. Bismarck appears to be circling. HMS Sheffield confirms it. Bismarck is making 8 knots, in uncontrollable circles. The monster has been chained. The obsolete, derided, fabric-covered Stringbag has done the impossible. Now, the executioners are coming. May 26, 1941, 21:40 p.m. The bridge, Bismarck. The ship is groaning. It is a deep, metallic agony, a sound of immense machinery under unbearable stress. Admiral Gunther Lutyens grips the steel rail, his knuckles white. The compass needle on the binnacle is swinging in a sick, wide arc. They are stuck, trapped in a continuous, agonizing circle to port. "Report," he barks into the voice pipe. The voice that comes back from Damage Control Central is strained, metallic, and fighting against the howl of the storm and the sound of flooding water. "Admiral, the steering gear compartments are completely flooded. The sea it's tearing the bulkhead. We cannot isolate it." "Send divers," Captain Ernst Lindemann demands, his face a mask of rage. "We must free the rudders." "We are trying, Captain." "But the pressure, the wreckage, it's impossible. The rudders are jammed solid." "The propellers," Lutyens orders. "Starboard engines full ahead, port engines full astern. Force her straight." The engine room telegraphs clang. Deep within the hull, the turbines whine. The ship shudders violently, straining against itself. The 50,000-ton fortress tries to tear itself apart, but the wind and the mountainous seas, catching the massive, jammed rudders, overpower the engines. The Bismarck is forced, stubbornly, relentlessly, back into its port turn. They are no longer a warship. They are a wreck. Lutyens looks at the chart table. Street Nazaire and safety are to the east. They are heading, uncontrollably, northwest, straight back into the teeth of Admiral Tovey's home fleet. A desperate, almost insane plan is hatched. They will send a diver over the side, in the middle of a Force 8 gale, to try and plant explosives on the rudders, to blow them off. It is a suicidal, impossible task. It is never attempted. They try to launch their Arado 196 float plane to carry the ship's log, battle reports, and a final word to Germany. But the storm is too violent. The catapult, damaged from the Prince of Wales engagement, cannot function. There is no escape. At 23:58 p.m., just before midnight, Admiral Lutyens walks to the radio room. He dictates a final, stark message to Naval Group West in Paris and to Berlin. To the Führer. Ship unmaneuverable. We will fight to the last shell. Long live the Führer. On the bridge, the mood is one of profound, exhausted doom. They are simply waiting for the end. But the end will not be quick. Meanwhile, 15 miles to the northeast, Captain Philip Vian, flying his pennant on HMS Cossack, is leading the 4th Destroyer Flotilla. These are not battleships. They are tin cans, greyhounds of the sea, thin-skinned, fast, and packed with torpedoes. With Vian are HMS Maori, HMS Zulu, HMS Sikh, and a ship flying the Polish naval ensign, the ORP Piorun. Vian, a notoriously aggressive commander, has one order. Maintain contact at all costs. Harass the enemy. Do not let him rest. They are the wolves, sent to circle the wounded bear. At 22:38 p.m., the Piorun Polish, for Thunderbolt, gets the first radar contact. Commander Eugeniusz Plowski, his ship and crew exiled from their homeland, stares at the flickering green blip. This is not just an enemy. This is the killer of his country. His duty is to report. His instinct is to attack. He does both. He signals Vian, then turns the Piorun toward the Bismarck. On the Bismarck's bridge, a lookout screams, "Destroyer! Starboard bow!" The Germans are stunned. A single destroyer, in this storm, is charging them. Plowski opens up with his 4.7-inch guns, firing wildly. It's a gesture of pure, suicidal defiance. Then, his signalman begins flashing a message in Morse code, uncoded, for the Germans to read. "I am a Pole." A challenge. The Bismarck responds with a salvo from its 15-inch main guns. The shells land with the force of bombs, erupting in the sea, sending up columns of water 300 feet high. The splashes are so vast they almost capsize the tiny destroyer. For nearly an hour, the Piorun dodges and weaves, firing its pea-shooters at the giant, before Vian orders Plowski to pull back. Now, the main attack begins. It is the Night of the Wolves. Vian's destroyers split, surrounding the Bismarck from all sides, a ring of steel closing in. You are a German gunner on the Bismarck's secondary 5.9-inch battery. You are exhausted. You have not slept in 3 days. You are soaked to the bone. Your world is a chaos of noise, the storm, the groaning of your own ship, and the constant, jarring hump of waves hitting the hull. Starshell, port beam. The sky is ripped open by a ghostly, flickering green-white light. HMS Cossack has fired its starshells, illuminating the Bismarck in an eerie, theatrical glow. And there, just 4,000 yards away, you see it, a sleek, low shadow, a destroyer, racing through the waves. "Fire! Fire! Fire!" Your guns erupt. The Bismarck once again becomes a volcano, its secondary and anti-aircraft batteries firing frantically into the night. But the destroyers are impossible targets. They are small, fast, and lost in the troughs of the 50-foot waves. Then, Zulu attacks. "Torpedoes away!" Maori attacks. "Torpedoes away!" Cossack attacks. Sikh attacks. All through the night, from 23:00 p.m. to 7 a.m., the attack is relentless. The destroyers dart in, fire torpedoes, and peel away, vanishing into the rain and darkness. The Bismarck's gunners are firing at shadows. They are firing at muzzle flashes. They are firing at radar ghosts. They expend thousands of shells, their gun barrels growing hot, firing at targets they cannot reliably hit. Inside the German battleship, it is psychological torture. There is no rest, no sleep, only the constant, jarring alarm bells, the flash of star shells, the thunder of their own guns, and the terrifying, unspoken fear. When will the next torpedo hit? One does. A torpedo from Cossack or Maori strikes, but it hits the same, thick armor belt as the Swordfish's first attempt. It causes more flooding, but no critical damage. For the British, it is just as harrowing. The destroyers are being thrown about like toys. Men are sick, they are lashed to their posts, but they hold contact. They are the eyes of the fleet. Dawn, May 27th, 1941, 8 a.m. The long night is over. The storm, while still raging, has abated slightly. The destroyers are low on fuel, their torpedoes spent. Vian pulls them back. Their job is done. The Bismarck is still alive, still defiant, but it is wounded, exhausted, and its crews are at the breaking point. To the northwest, the horizon is changing. On the bridge of HMS King George V, Admiral John Tovey lowers his binoculars. He has been chasing this ship for 2,000 miles. His own fuel is dangerously low. This is his last chance. A lookout on HMS Rodney, the old, slow battleship with the massive 16-inch guns, sees it first. A dark, magnificent, and wounded shape, silhouetted against the grey morning light. It is low in the water, listing to port, its bow covered in sea foam. Enemy! In sight, the Rodney and King George V turn their massive turrets. The Norfolk and Dorsetshire, heavy cruisers, move in. The ring of steel is complete. The WWII had been the snare. The destroyers had been the wolves. Now, the executioners, the heavy butchers of the fleet, had arrived. 8:43 a.m., May 27th, 1941. On the bridge of HMS King George V, Admiral John Tovey stares through his binoculars. His fuel is nearly exhausted. He has just enough for 1 hour of combat before he must turn for home. This is the end. 8 miles distant, Bismarck is a sight both tragic and terrifying. She is listing heavily to port, her bow is down, and much of her main deck is awash. She is on fire, but she is still a monster. Signal to the fleet, Tovey says, his voice calm. Form battle line. Engage at will. He turns to his captain. Open fire. 8:47 a.m. Aboard HMS Rodney, the gunnery captain gives the order. Main turrets. 9-gun broadside, 16-inch. Fire. With a concussion that shakes the ocean. 9. 2,000. 400 pound. 1,000. 100 kilograms. Shells. The largest naval shells used in the Atlantic War are unleashed. They scream across the grey sky. Seconds later, HMS King George V opens up with her 14-inch guns. On Bismarck, the German gun crews, exhausted, soaked, but unbroken, are at their stations. Their gunnery officer, Adalbert Schneider, the man who had straddled Hood, is in the main fire control director. The ship may be unsteerable, but her guns are perfectly functional. Target, lead ship, Bismarck, fires back. Her first salvo is terrifying. It is accurate, straddling Rodney. Colossal columns of water erupt, higher than the British battleship's masts. The officers on Rodney's bridge exchange stunned glances. Even dying, the ship fights like a demon. But she cannot win. She is a shackled target. The British ships are free dancers, and the storm, combined with her jammed rudders, is making Bismarck wallow violently. Schneider cannot keep his sights steady. 8:54 a.m., a 16-inch shell from Rodney hits. It punches through the armoured forward fire control director. The entire central fire control system is obliterated. Adalbert Schneider and his team are dead. Bismarck is now blind. A minute later, a 14-inch shell from King George V hits the bridge. It tears through the thick armour, turning the command centre into a slaughterhouse. Captain Lindemann is killed. Admiral Lutyens is killed. The entire senior command of the ship is wiped out in 1 second. Now, the British battleships begin to close. This is no longer a gunnery duel, it is an execution. Tovey brings his fleet in to an unbelievable range point blank in naval terms, just 4,000 yards. At this distance, the heavy shells do not arc, they fly flat, they cannot miss. Rodney turns broadside, firing 16-inch salvos at close range. King George V does the same. The cruisers Norfolk and Dorsetshire charge in, firing their 8-inch guns, tearing the superstructure to pieces. The scene on Bismarck is from Dante's Inferno. The forward turrets, Anton and Bruno, are knocked out by a direct hit. The superstructure is reduced to a burning, twisted black skeleton. Fire rages from every deck, but the ship refuses to sink. Her 13-inch armor belt, the belt that shrugged off the Victorious's torpedo, is doing its job. The shells are destroying everything above the waterline, but cannot penetrate her vital heart below it. Amidst the chaos, the aft turrets, Caesar and Dora, continue to fight. Under local control, the surviving gunners, cut off from the rest of the ship, keep loading and firing, a last, defiant gesture. 9:31 a.m. Bismarck's last gun falls silent. She is now a burning, dead hulk, drifting, but she is still floating. Admiral Tovey looks at his fuel gauges. He cannot stay. He orders HMS Rodney to fire torpedoes, the only time in history a battleship fired torpedoes at another battleship. They hit, but still, she floats. I must withdraw, Tovey signals. He turns King George V and Rodney for home. He leaves the heavy cruiser HMS Dorsetshire to finish the kill. 10:15 a.m. Dorsetshire approaches the burning ghost ship. Hundreds of surviving German sailors are climbing from the hatches, jumping into the heavy seas. Captain Martin of the Dorsetshire fires 2 torpedoes into Bismarck's starboard side. Both hit. The ship lists, but floats. He circles to the port side and fires a third. It hits. At the same time, deep inside the dying hull, Bismarck's surviving chief engineers are performing their final duty. They will not let her be captured. They are opening the scuttling charges. It is a simultaneous coup de grace. Bismarck begins to heel over. Slowly at first, then rapidly, she capsizes to port. Hundreds of men are thrown into the sea. The great ship turns keel up, exposing her red bottom and massive propellers. She pauses for a moment, as if taking a final breath. 10:39 a.m., May 27th, 1941. The battleship Bismarck slides stern first into the sea. Her battle ensign is still flying. Dorsetshire and Maori stop to pick up survivors, pulling 110 exhausted, oil-soaked men from the water. But then, a U-boat alarm sounds. The British ships are forced to withdraw, leaving hundreds more to die in the cold water. Of a crew of over 2,200, only 115 would survive. The hunt was over. In the Ark Royal's aircrew room, the news comes through. Bismarck sunk. There is no cheering, just exhausted silence. The Stringbag pilots had done it. They had not sunk her. The battleships had done that. No, they had done something more important. The most powerful warship in the world, a ship that had laughed off 16-inch shells for nearly an hour, had been doomed by a single blow. Not from a gun, not from a bomb, but from one torpedo, dropped by a fabric-covered biplane, flying so slowly it was almost invisible to modern technology. The German captains had laughed at the Stringbag. They called it a joke, a relic. They were not laughing when that one obsolete torpedo jammed their rudders and sentenced them to death in the cold North Atlantic.